不知道大家有没有想过，会沟通的人其实就是很有魅力的人。那展现魅力的方式也有非常多种。那今天就让我们来听听其中一个最有效跟最容易学习的一个原则，就算英文是第二语言也没有问题哦。Hello， 欢迎来到 Executive Plus 主管双语沟通力的 podcast。我们希望带给大家最实用的沟通工具，包括了成功人士对全球市场的分享、职场英语的技能、跨文化沟通技巧与其他能帮助您成为出色领导者的工具。Hi, I'm Sherry, founder of Executive Plus. As a language trainer and certified coach, I've trained hundreds of managers from Fortune 500 companies such as Dior, Google, Deloitte, and Yahoo.
And I'm Nick, Director of Communication Strategy at Presentality. I've helped startups raise millions of US dollars in funding and train the executives of publicly listed companies to present on the global stage.
Welcome to the Executive Plus podcast,
where you can take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everybody, welcome back to an Executive Plus podcast. In this episode, we want to talk about that wonderful thing called charisma. The kind of person who walks into a room and everybody likes and everyone want to talk to them. So the question becomes, how do you get charisma? And how do you do it in a second language?
So, do you agree with us, Nick, that someone with charisma is always a very good communicator?
I think people with charisma are really good at getting conversations going and being warm throughout a conversation. Doesn't always mean that their communication is logical or well-structured, but someone with charisma can always make you happy to talk to them.
So someone's really good at connecting with their audience, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. Why I wanted to do this episode is because I watched a lot of YouTube videos from this particular YouTube channel called Charisma on Demand. And what the producer do is that they cut a lot of the celebrities' interviews and then they analyze the celebrities, movie stars, singers, the way they communicate, the way they answer questions in our interviews and analyze why they're so charismatic. So, every time in our age, I think we think of someone who's really charismatic. It's George Clooney, Bill Clinton. And in a video, he talks about, what's her name? Emilia Clarke. Am I saying her name right?
Yeah, Emilia Clarke. For those of you who are familiar with her work, she plays Daenerys Targaryen in the Game of Thrones series. She was also in the movie Me Before You and has done several other movies since then.
Right. And then this guy, Simu, right? He's the new Marvel superhero Asian representative. And he also analyzed why he's actually so charismatic in an interview. 所以看了那么多的这些影片，我发现呢，有一个共同点，也就是 validating others。那这个共同点，我觉得很重要，也对我们来讲非常的有用，因为我们都可以在职场上面可以执行，在生活中你不一定要在一个 on TV interview situation， 你可以在平常的生活中我们就可以运用到，而且呢，对我们如果是英文是你第二语言的话，也非常的实用。
Throughout Simu's interviews, but also across several other celebrities, Emilia Clarke would be one, Keanu Reeves does this a lot, Ryan Reynolds does this, where some may call it being humble or humility, but it's actually anytime that they receive a compliment, their first instinct is to spread that compliment across everyone who supports them. So a lot of times when you hear people compliment Keanu Reeves, he'll be like, oh, it wasn't just me. I had great stunt directors. I had wonderful co-stars, and the crew really put in all the hard work. They immediately take that information and then just spread it out across everyone else.
所以他们做了一个很厉害，就是他们会去转移这个 compliment， 人家对他的赞美，他马上转移放到别人的身上。It's the reason I'm here today is not because of what I've done, it's because what my team and the group of people, they have achieved so much. So he immediately or she immediately would just pass on that compliment to someone else.
Right. And they're not actually deflecting it. They're not being like, oh, I don't deserve the praise. But what they're really good at is, again, making it sound like a group thing. And that kind of makes it more attractive because you know that by being near that person that they're trying to lift everyone else up. And that becomes a large part of their charisma, is that you're getting attracted to a person who just has a default of like lifting the whole room, not focusing all the attention on themselves.
And now I think this is really applicable in our business kind of environment, is that even when that person is not here and in front of you, you can still compliment him or compliment her, because eventually that will actually go back to that person, right? So it just shows that you're not self-centered. You don't put yourself in the center at all time. You actually see the value of other people. And yeah, it's just good karma. 我觉得 eventually 对方还是会知道说，诶，他好像在某个 meeting 赞美我，然后呢提拔我，build me up, and that worked really well for my promotion. I think this is something that would always plays really well in a business situation.
Yeah. And another person that you can see do this really, really well for specific others would be The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. He is very good at complimenting his co-stars even when they're not there. Like, he'll always talk about how hard his other co-stars work. Whereas Keanu Reeves will talk about the crew, the producing company. But if you want to see like how another person will give credit to co-star or a producer very specifically, Dwayne Johnson does this very well.
And I think this came up with in our conversation. I asked Nick, okay, so since he brought up Dwayne Johnson, I asked him, what about Kevin Hart? And then we both kind of agreed that he's funny.
Yeah, we wouldn't count him as charismatic. He's very humorous. He knows how to tell a joke. He knows how to lighten the mood.
Right.
But I wouldn't call him charismatic.
It's really interesting. Then I think it also comes down to the fact that Dwayne Johnson's really good at complimenting others, building people up.
Part of that charisma definitely comes from directing attention to other people. Like Kevin Hart's very good at joking about himself, joking about his family. But when it comes to a lot of the people we're calling charismatic, is you'll notice they constantly shift the conversation off of them to others.
So now there's another thing that I think for 如果我们英文不是那么我们 comfortable 的一个语言的话，但这个也非常好可以来利用，就是一种叫做 repeating other people's word, like a mirroring effect. 把自己当成一个实验好了，如果我讲一个字，比如说Oh, that is so weird, 然后对方就用同样字 Yeah, that is weird, right? 你会觉得也很 validated. You feel like I am approved, like what I said was correct.
Yeah, a lot of it is that validating to the other person's opinion. So I think you talked about Amelia Clark does this a lot. Now, it helps that her personality is quite bubbly, and she has probably the most expressive eyebrows that you will ever see. But whenever someone says something she agrees with, she really kind of validates and jumps in that, like, oh, exactly. And then she'll repeat that. And it builds that connection between her and the interviewer. It's not like interviewer asks questions and then she just answers. It's kind of like she'll validate a unique insight or something really interesting that the interviewer says, and then she'll expand upon that. But by doing that, they almost feel interconnected as opposed to like ask and answer.
所以常常他都会讲说 Oh, exactly or absolutely 就会让人家觉得诶我刚刚问的这个问题好像问得很好 You know, it's a good question 或者我讲的话 She thinks it's a good idea. So yeah, just saying that Oh, exactly, absolutely or just kind of repeating. Use other people's word and then to answer the question.
Yeah, and you'll notice there's kind of a difference. For example, Jennifer Lawrence is someone who I would consider, she's very bubbly, she's fun to watch in interviews, but that charisma isn't quite the same as Amelia Clark's because it's more bubbly, it's just kind of fun in the way she talks, whereas Amelia Clark really try to like bring the interview into the conversation. Another person who's quite good at that is Anna Joy Taylor, the main actress from The Queen's Gambit.
Yeah.
Whenever she interviews, she's very charismatic in the way that she engages the interviewer.
And it's funny, 如果你真的是仔细去想，虽然某一些人 like Kevin Hart 非常的 very humorous, Jennifer Lawrence 也是非常大家都很喜欢跟他谈话，但是你会发现他们为什么我们不把它放在一个 charismatic, you know, we don't see them as charismatic people is because it's more about themselves than other people when they're conducting an interview.
Right. So a lot of their humor is directed at themselves, what makes them maybe easier to connect to. They have that self-deprecating humor, which we've talked about in previous podcasts, but it's more along the lines of the attention is still on them. Whereas when you look at even a Ryan Reynolds does a lot of self-deprecating humor, but similar to Keanu Reeves, his first intention is always to shift praise to other people. Like, oh, it wasn't me, I'm just there, but it was actually all my crew. So he's kind of that balance between the humor and the charm or charisma.
And now, one thing I do wanted to note is that we kind of talked about people, like Nick said, Emilia Clarke, 她非常的 bubbly, 也就是非常的活泼 right? Or 有蛮多的一些女明星通常有这样子的 quality. But you don't absolutely have to be bubbly.
No.
To be charismatic, right? Think of Keanu Reeves. He's the opposite.
Yeah, he's sort of kind of a solemn guy, quiet.
He's definitely the king of introverts, right? He represents introverts everywhere. He's a little awkward sometimes as well. So if you're not a bubbly person, you don't have to be a bubbly person. But I think, just building people up, right? 第二个就是 compliment or reverse compliment, and then just repeating, mirroring other people's words. 我觉得用这3个点，其实你也可以变成一个非常有魅力的人。
Yeah, if you want more examples, we'll link a few fun episodes from the YouTube channel in the show notes, and you can definitely check them out. I'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
如果你喜欢我们的 podcast， 欢迎来追踪我们的主管英文 Executive Plus 的 Facebook。那也可以写信到我们的信箱 yourcareerplus@gmail.com。